You need a.
Yes, it is.
Matt, I just don't think we've met. We're ready? Well, welcome, Dave and the others in the room. We appreciate, can't see any others joining us, but welcome to our work meeting. Number one on this agenda for today is Matt, Water Conservation Plan.
Yes. So this is not an annual, it's a report that you send in, I think, every 6 years. And you set goals on how you'll conserve water. There's kind of just a basic template that they like us to use. And so we just followed their template, put in the data and it's ready. The state has already looked at it and they are good with it. You just need to adopt it officially. So the things that are of interest, I suppose, would be your goals, which are on page 9. You have conservation goals and best new goals, I guess. So you basically you just want to make sure that the goal number 1 just says you'll meter all your sources and water use. Goal number 2 says your ordinances will include an incentive to conserve water, public awareness and outreach. You send out mailers. That's how you've accomplished that. And then and your water rate schedule will also encourage residences to conserve water. So we just kind of put the status of your current goals and then set some new goals. So we got 3 new goals to create a drought contingency plan by the end of next year. That's helpful for some of the grants and other loans and stuff that we've been looking at to be a part of that. Weaver Basin has one that doesn't really include the city, and so it'd be nice to have your own. Increase reporting accuracy, goal number 2. We need to get some additional meters installed so that they read. Meters will get out of compliance with their original specs as they age, right? And so just getting new meters and making sure we have accurate readings, especially on the numbers that we report to the state. And the last goal, reduce the per capita water rate by 5.5% by 2027. So basically it's 1% a year for the next 5 years, try to reduce that. So I don't know if you have any questions, but hey, Gary, I think I took your seat.
No, you're good. There is no seat here that is designated for Gary.
Oh, whoops, sorry about that.
Yeah. We're kind of in a catch up mode. So like on a lot of the meters, we've actually the last 2 budget years, we've done about 250 meters that needed replaced. So, and yeah, that's part of our budget. Now, so we're pretty well caught up now. That's just last year, that was one of the big things that we did during the drought is the meter replacement. It's one thing we found out is that we had a whole list and our guys just never got to it. So we purchased a bunch and had a third party come and swap them out. The other thing is it's on our flow meters. So we're still working on that to get at our sources and just get better accurate data on that, get it all plugged into the SCADA system. So we just have real time and accurate flows. So we have a whole line item that's just meters.
Do we have anything in place that measures like how old our meters are? I mean, like we have the oldest meters to the newest meters. Do we know that?
Yeah, so the new ones are all being logged on our GIS. So every meter on our GIS will just have a little info sheet that says when it was installed, what type it is, how deep it is, all that stuff.
And some of those radio read meters throughout the city have probably been there for, I don't know, I know mine's been there for, I don't know. What's the longevity of a meter?
How often do they need to be replaced? I actually don't know the answer to that. I think some will go out sooner than others. But as you're reading as you get your monthly meter totals, if there's something that's out of norm, then you would start looking at replacing that meter. I actually don't know if I could tell you which meters are the oldest, the residential meters are the oldest or commercial in the city, but we do that now, like Ty's saying.
Yeah, when we do them, it's on a 10-year. It's like 10-year is a minimum, and then we start replacing them. But if we haven't had problems with them, yeah.
'Cause I know some of those radio read meters, we started putting them in place back, I think, in Arnold Smith's day. I think is when we started with some of those radio reads. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
But I guess
Probably like everything else, the newer ones last a lot less
Yeah.
time than
Not as good as the old ones.
Waste society.
yeah. But
I have a question, Matt. Looking on page 4 at the table 1.5. And just dropping down to the year 2021, annual source of 649 acre feet. That'd be all of our wells and springs. Is that correct? The 649?
Right. Wells and springs. You don't have any other water that you purchase. It all comes from wells and springs.
Okay. And then our annual use for that year was 417. Is another way of looking at it, is that saying that we used 65% of our available water that year?
You build, I think the better way to look at it is that's how much water you build. So there's 35% of that either that comes through the system but doesn't get used. So it's lost in like where a reservoir spills. It's like some of your reservoirs, they'll fill full and then spill. You're still measuring the amount of water that's coming in, but then that water spills and you don't bill it at the end user. So, or it could be losses, leaks and that kind of thing in the system.
we've had unmetered connections. Metered and not billed connections, and then just loss on the system, so leaks and.
So it looks like it's improved from, say, 2015 for sure, which was almost 50%. Is that a typical number? Is that excessive? And I know Ty's done a lot of work, particularly last year, in identifying some leaks and problems, and maybe that's part of the answer. But to say here's 35% then that was, I'm not sure the word, not wasted, but not used. Is that typical, do you think?
I think that's actually kind of high. But it depends on how you meter and report it. So in this case, you're actually reporting water that you're collecting but not using. It would be better to just report the water that comes into the system and not being spilled. So a lot of it depends on where the meter is located. And the other thing is some of this is kind of extrapolated data. And so your public works guys are just trying to make sense of the data that they get, right? So sometimes they don't have a meter where they need it. So, but they have, for example, they meter the water going into a water tank and they meter the water that's being spilled, but they don't actually know how much of that water goes directly into the system without subtracting one from the other. Does that make sense?
Okay.
They know how much water went to waste and they know how much water came into the system, but they don't actually measure the amount of water that's leaving the tank and going into the system. So it just depends on how it's set up and arranged. And we could look at that, I think, over time and try to refine that so that it's more accurately measured and reported.
You'd suspect that if there was more accuracy, the efficiency may improve.
Right, because right now I don't know if you need to report the water that you're not using, but you are at this point. In some cases, at certain spring sites, like the Robinson Spring is the one I'm talking about, right?
So is that built into a conservancy plan? The idea that, we talk about water that's not being used, and maybe, you mentioned it was maybe a little bit excessive. Where do we go from here? How can we correct that? What do we do to maybe improve?
So you do have plans. We've been working with the water system operator to and the SCADA people. The city hires has a SCADA contractor, if you will, that helps set up all those meters and collects the data. And we just need to make that, like you say, as accurate as we can. But right now we're still getting all the meters in place and trying to make sense of some of the data that comes out of that SCADA report.
Yeah, I noticed in your next report, there were multiple assumptions because you didn't have data that historically went back very far. And in fact, it seemed like in some cases, 2021 was about all you had to work with. So,
yeah, so, right.
So I would suspect going forward, some of that accuracy or data improves.
Yes, we are certainly hoping so. It makes it really hard on me to make sense of some of the data.
Yeah.
And of course, your operator is trying to report that. Some of the data was just not collected or preserved. It just got lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had to kind of go back and look at other ways to calculate some of those numbers. So, yeah.
Yeah, 2019, we had 900 acre feet of annual source, okay? What the report says. 2021, 649. Is that saying there was, this is going to be a silly question, I apologize for my ignorance here. Is that basically saying there's not as much flow coming out of the springs?
Yes.
Is that what that's
I
saying?
think that's what it really means. Assuming that everything is being metered accurately, which we know is really not true because some of the meters weren't reading correctly. But assuming they were, you might have years of higher spring runoff and you wouldn't use all the water. So, but you're still collecting it into your system. It's going through your tank and then spilling. So in those years, it would just be, I would assume, a higher spring runoff.
No, and is this the annual source, does it have anything to do with the wells?
Yes,
It includes the wells as
includes the
well.
wells. Yeah.
So if you actually kicked your wells on, you would have, this annual source would be net.
But even
Higher,
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 correct.
higher.
Right.
Okay,
yes.
all right,
Yeah.
okay.
But I would suspect that on those years when it's really high, you've either actually had a really high use or a higher runoff, from the springs or collection from, from the springs.
So Matt, you say we turn this into the state and they've maybe taken a first glance at it. what are actions on the state's part? And then as you look at this report, as you look at what the state typically does, do we expect any, are there any concerns? Are there, are there remedial actions? What do they do with the report?
They just want you to be aware of it. It's really just an awareness thing for the city. So I don't know of any, any action that they take other than, did you turn it in? And then how do you, when you evaluate your goals, how are you doing? And are you aware of how you're progressing on them? So it's just once every 5 or 6 years, you turn the report in and review it. So.
All right. And it's apparent that you've worked with the city management on goals. Ty, you feel the goals are obtainable?
Yep. Yeah, it's all work in progress, but
Yeah,
In
Notice
some
that-
ways, you've already attained them because.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, if we're right there or close or North Morgan Water or whatever, it's going to happen.
yeah, we definitely don't have our head in the sand as far as like what we're trying to accomplish on the water system. We're actively working towards improvements
Mhm.
time, and it starts with data. So just some of them, not having them on SCADA, we'd read them once a month, and if it wasn't reading for a whole month, you can imagine what the
Yeah.
numbers look like. You know what so on your inflows, stuff like that, we're,
Take a guess the last month and.
yeah, and that's where we're trying to get to, is that the system will tell us, hey, meter quit reading. Go check it out. And then the other thing is the SCADA will record it over the whole time instead of just going once a month, taking a read and saying, hey, this is what this month looked like. And then,
It's wonderful what an efficient SCADA system can do. So if there's a leak, it will detect that. It will sometimes be able to notify the homeowner or the city before they even know it, before it surfaces or cause any flooding or problem, So SCADA can be really useful with respect to water conservation.
the other thing is our SCADA system will have the tolerances set when booster pumps and tank levels, right? So that you can maximize the tank storage that you have and not operate the wells prematurely. So there's a lot of push and pull stuff that I think we've been doing, but it's been more
So
to the operator
Reaction.
to kind of figure that out, you know what I mean? Then
you have booster pumps, Ty's talking about wells, you can do an energy efficiency analysis, right? And you can decide where the water, once everything is metered accurately, you can decide where the water is going and when it gets there, and then decide how to more efficiently use your pumps and wells to get the water where it needs to be so that you're avoiding peak charges from the power company. In this case, you're probably okay because you
or running the pumps and then at night spilling from the
Right.
spring,
yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
want the tank to
Yeah.
drop a little bit, and all of those just come into that equation of
But you can, yeah,
where.
you
so-
can not only conserve water, but power, right?
Yep,
With a
both,
good,
yep.
yeah.
So there's,
And it looks
Lots
like
of goals.
we're improving.
That was my next question. I was gonna ask Matt to answer a possible question. What happened in 2012?
I don't know.
I mean, what changed so that since then it's gone down?
Well, you gotta also in 2000, you didn't have as many rooftops.
Yeah.
So there wasn't. as-
That's what's neat about that. So the general trend is all that is all that graph shows. And you can see the general trend is basically downward. And
Okay.
what's good about that is, you're increasing rooftops, but also, decrease, gallons per home. So it's actually, I can't explain why there's a bump there.
Yeah.
But
I thought that was interesting.
it could have been a meter problem,
Can't remember 2012.
or it could actually, 10 years ago. Yeah, I don't know what happened 10 years ago.
You were still here.
Ty was only 16 years old then.
What was I tell you? I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, yeah. Maybe all the new move-ins are just more conservative.
Well, but density will do that, right? So it's more people per connection, and then the higher the density, the less use. So,
Do the
on a-
math.
Yeah, like on a townhome, it's
Sure.
Fewer fixtures, less water.
it's less square feet, less family or less person per unit. So, and that's actually a pretty level line for such a small population, because our, you know what I'm saying, like percentage wise, we could see a lot of variability one year over the next. So,
I know I can't remember 2012.
but that last one, when we went through the drought, you know, I remember I did that one chart just in the 1 month of August, we saved 4.7 million gallons in that 1 month when, you know, when we were going through our drought response, so.
You had a lot to do with leaks, didn't it, though?
The wallet makes you fix leaks.
How much this summer have we been pumping the wells? Has the spring held better this year than it did the last couple?
Yeah, we're still running, we still had to run the wells. There was several times this year where we hit 6 feet at the bottom of the tank, you know,
Hit the well
on the weekend. So it's not that we've been not running the wells and the booster pumps, but the inflow of the spring's been good, right? But we run the pumps every summer, but
Sure.
some of that's just been balancing act and yeah. It's not giving it a
We
chance.
good with item 1? Any more comments from anybody?
Interesting.
Okay, let's go to item 2. Matt, you're still on the floor.
Okay, your culinary water capital facilities plan and impact fee facilities plan. So in order to charge an impact fee to new development, you need to have a comprehensive, what they call impact fee facilities plan. And what that does is it identifies the projects that you plan to do within the next 10 years or so. And then those costs are evaluated to see how much of the project cost is actually due to new development and how much is fixing old problems and those kinds of things. And so the impact fee facility plans will do basically 2 things: identify the projects that you feel as a city are necessary to complete in the near future to allow growth to continue and to fix problems that you already have in the system. And then the other part of that impact fee facilities plan is to decide how much of those project costs can be attributed directly to growth and could be used in the calculation of an impact fee. And so the impact, this report does not calculate an impact fee. That would be the next step. And so the purpose of the public hearing is to allow residents to come in and review the projects that have been identified, and then to kind of help us prioritize them, I suppose. They can give comments, they can even sometimes provide corrections, you know, for things that we have, assumptions that we have made perhaps that are wrong. So, and there are a lot of assumptions in a report like this. We don't know exactly how much you're going to grow. And so we've assumed a growth rate, for example, and it can be, who knows, right? I mean, you get one large tract of land that develops all of a sudden and your growth rate skyrockets, or, you know, maybe nothing happens and you've planned for growth, but it's not happening yet. You know? With inflation, for example, may slow growth.
So if we were to do another water impact fee, take a look at it and see what fee would be reasonable. I don't remember the last time we did one. It's been.
That's a good question. It's probably been about 10 years.
I just-
Yeah.
As I recall, I think it was I think it was probably Susie Becker that helped us out. So if someone like Zions or someone, or a consultant does an impact fee study for us, I assume they use a lot of information off of this to help determine that impact fee.
I already called Zions Bank and asked them to give me a list of information that they need. And they gave me a list and said, I need to see these numbers and these tables, and they need to be shown in this way so that I can take that report and then use it to create, to perform the impact fee analysis. Now, it doesn't mean you have to use Zions Public Finance to do
Yeah.
it, but I just got that. Yeah, I just checked with them, made sure that I was showing the data correctly in the way that they like to see it, because they actually have a kind of a specific way they like to even see the data. And so I try to include that in the tables. So I think I've got it in there. I would say this, that you'll have the public hearing today. We'll get some feedback. We can revise the plan. We expect to make some revisions before it's adopted. But I would actually recommend that you start the impact. If you're going to do an impact fee analysis, start it so that if whoever the financial consultant is, if they have feedback too, that they need something changed in the plan, that we make those changes as well before you adopt it formally. So I would get them going together. And then once you get near the end of the impact fee analysis, we'll make all those final changes if they have any. And then you can adopt the impact, give a formal adoption for the impact fee facilities plan and the impact fee analysis. They might start that impact fee analysis and say, you have way too many, your impact fee is going to be, 10 grand for water. You have way too many projects identified. And so then you would want to back off and say, okay, we're obviously not going to build that much infrastructure in the next 10 years. We'll back off. And so the plan may change a little bit, but the purpose of today is just to give the public their input, their opportunity to have some input, right? But then we'll take that input and any input from the impact fee consult or the financial consultant to finish it up.
Another question. On page 17, water source projects. Drinking water well number 6 and drinking water well number 7. What is that?
Okay, so you actually have quite a bit of water. For your annual, when you look at how much water you need in a year, you actually have quite a bit of water. You don't need water. You don't need more water in the next 10 years to meet your annual allotment. But what's happening is, and part of it's because some of the system is on irrigation, on what we call a peak day, we're using a lot of water on a specific day, right? So it's in the summer and everybody's irrigating and water consumption goes up in the summer. So even though you have enough water to last you throughout the year, you don't have the ability to produce enough on a peak day. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so the wells help with that. So the spring flows usually drop in the summer a little bit. And now you're pumping the wells and you've got Mahogany, Island Road, and the Park well that you have. And they're great wells, but on a peak day, you actually need a little bit more water, right? And so it'd be nice to and especially if one goes down, so you have a backup. And so we're recommending that you get another couple of, it depends. If you can get one well that'll do 1,400 gallons a minute, which is possible here, then you just do one, right? But I broke it down into 2 wells, assuming that maybe wherever we drill, we don't get the full amount out of it. You might need to drill a second one. So I'd rather plan for a little extra than be short. It would be more economical to do one 1,400 gallon a minute well than 2 700 gallon.
We've not identified a site or anything.
No, but that's also a recommendation. 1, well siting study. So we would have a hydrogeologist come look at the city, the formations, and just where it would be a good place to drill a new well.
So with the Parkwell chlorination, would that help as far as available water?
Sort of. The water's there and it's usable. The problem is when he uses it, it depletes your chlorine residual in the system because that particular source is not chlorinated. It's clean water. It's not required to be treated, but when you use it, it dilutes the chlorine in the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you need to have chlorination there to be able to fully use that without diluting the chlorine in the rest of the system.
So that would help as far as our water supplies.
You could use it more than you do now.
Matt, I've got a question. Just looking at the graphic on page 24, the deficiencies, existing deficiencies, you call them, and it's kind of I think that, well, the map's a summary of the discussion leading up to the map, and it's talking about deficiencies that we get. Typically, it seemed like we'd get to the end of a 6-inch line and not have enough, I suppose it's pressure. And they were usually at the end of a run. There was talk that, as we loop things, i.e. Como, for example, that helps resolve some of that. And there's talk about how to resolve it. But I guess my question is, how do we get in this spot where we even have the deficiencies as water systems are designed? Why wouldn't they be designed so that we wouldn't have a deficiency?
There's a couple of reasons for that. One of the main reason is that previously, like prior to 95 or something like that, the minimum water line size changed. And so people are putting in the minimum water line size, which was like 6-inch back then, and now it's 8-inch. And so now we're putting in larger lines. And so what we do now kind of helps out. But back then there wasn't, they were just putting in smaller lines because that's all that was required. And if you wanted to put in a larger line, then the city had to pay for the difference. Does that make sense? And so the city wasn't really stepping in and helping pay for development so they could put in larger lines. We do have a water model now, though. So since then, we've created a water model and we're able to identify those types of issues early, right? So if there is a need for a larger line, we can identify it and then approach, at least let the city know, hey, eventually you're going to need a 10-inch line here. And so if you'll pay the difference now, it'll be cheaper than going and replacing the line later, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other reason is that we can't always loop a system. And so we anticipate that a system will be looped eventually. So when a development goes in and they run a new road and we run a water line down the road, it stops at the next farm field or whatever. We know eventually that's going to connect through. And so it kind of creates a temporary deficiency until that line is connected through all the way. And we try to balance that out. Sometimes we just tell the developer, well, you have to put in a larger line today, even though a larger line isn't required tomorrow, right? And so sometimes we just work through those issues. We work, most of the time, it's associated with what we call just the fire flow for the fire department. And if he's willing to accept the level of service that's provided, then we just stop there, right? Because we know it's going to improve when the system loops. But if he can't accept that, then we require a larger line to be put in.
So when these 6-inch lines were put in place at the moment, we say, all right, put a 6-inch line in. The next day when it's all done and the water, that the service is turned on, we don't have a deficiency, do we?
Today we don't, but because that's what happened in the past, we do. So if you look at 600 East up by the UDOT sheds, the old sheds back up there, those lines were put in a long time ago, back when 6-inch was fine. Also, it depends on the types of structures. If there's not a structure down there, what is the required fire flow? It's up to the fire marshal to decide, whether it is needed there or not. I identified them because there are homes down there as being deficient, right?
Okay. All right, thank you.
It doesn't, the deficiency doesn't really mean, it's not a badge of shame, right? It's just something that we've reevaluated the system, looked at it, and based on today's current rules and requirements, there is a deficiency. but it doesn't necessarily reflect on past councils and public works employees or anything.
Or poor design, the engineering and so forth.
Can I make a comment about that? So in the impact fee law is in place to provide for new development to pay its own way. That's the whole purpose of the exercise we're going through tonight. It's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have very much to do with, for example, the future, anything beyond 10 years of our capital facilities plan. It's a critical piece in establishing a fee that new development has to pay when it comes in. New development is prohibited from having to pay for anything that the cities should have put in, or over time, anything that has deteriorated. For example, if in the roads impact fee, you can widen the road if it's attributable to new development, but you can't widen the road if it's just simply attributable to the fact that this road is deficient in the first place, or it's too narrow in the first place to accommodate traffic. And sometimes standards change, which is the reason for the deficiency here. And that's the standard has changed to 8 from 6. That's not due to new development at all. Our existing lines have to be updated to what the fire code it now indicates is an average size line, or is the correct size line for fire flow. And so the same thing is true with streets. Sometimes the standards will change, or from sewer, the same thing. We can't charge for something that everybody ought to share in the cost of improving or increasing the size up. But we can charge a developer for those things that the developer is causing a need for, the enlargement of the pipes, that type of thing. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, another thought comes to mind with the deficiencies. Does that affect homeowner insurance rates?
for water lines, or for the water lines?
Yeah, if we have the deficiency in the water line, does that increase?
Yeah, in the same way that a tank that's too small to service an area would affect it. It would affect anything that affects the ability to serve what they call the standard for the ability to serve would probably affect their insurance rates, but probably not significantly.
Okay.
Let me just say one more thing. When you're looking at exhibit 6.1, the main purpose of that exhibit is to identify areas where there is already a problem and a developer would not be responsible to fix it. Right?
Good point. Yeah, good point. Gotcha.
But that a lot better than attorneys do. I don't know why.
That was only one.
More succinct.
Yeah, that was only one sentence,
Right on.
Gary. That was only one sentence, Gary.
Never done that.
Yeah. Well, you cover your bases anyway. Yeah, okay, thank you, Matt and Gary.
Years ago, back in the 1800s when I was here, we had a really critical deficiency in the whole system of fire flows. And that's when we built the New South Morgan tank. We drilled the well on the Island Road, upgraded the park well. And that was all due to the fact that the fire flows throughout the city were pretty deficient. So that was one of the reasons we went ahead and did that project. And that had to have been, that's a few years ago, but that was one of the reasons we did that project.
Those were excellent projects.
Yeah, so where we're at, just looking now down the road, Matt, where we're at today, we don't have any similar urgent needs.
Well, we put these projects on that 10-year plan, what we call the impact fee facilities plan, because we recommend these projects if you want to grow at the rate that we've assumed.
Okay.
So if you're not concerned about growth, then you don't even need to do any projects really, because you meet the state standards and guidelines and rules. So, but we're just saying that if you want to be able to continue to grow without having to inhibit growth, put in a moratorium or whatever for your water system, then we would recommend you do these do these projects. We just feel like it's good planning. You may not need them all, but I think it's good to plan for at least those projects so that you can, allow people to develop.
And I think, Gary, you've mentioned before that whether we want to or not, we have an obligation to provide the water if there is growth.
Yes, if there's a moratorium placed, for example, we had a moratorium on sewer for a little while
Mhm.
Water back in that day.
and water. Yes, yep. And you can put a moratorium on those things, but the way the state law reads is you can't do that forever.
Mhm.
You have to have a plan in place for increasing the size of your lines and making it large. Everybody's going, darn, shoot, but you have to have a plan in place, a realistic plan in place for improving your system so that it will accommodate growth.
Yeah, rezoning the entire city as agricultural is not a reasonable plan.
Well, and you don't need to worry about a moratorium if the interest rate goes up. That's right.
Yes.
Dan.
It continues to go.
Is there any more comments? I'm excited to get to item 3. Way
What is
excited,
item
actually.
That's you.
Oh, it's
So this is a public hearing, right?
You guys are.
On these-
Today.
On these 2 items, we come out of the public hearing, we make a motion to approve or accept these.
No, I think, well, actually Denise, how is it written? Is it?
That's a great question.
So,
You're not approving this plan. What you're doing is recommending that the city move forward with finalizing the capital facilities plan and doing the impact fee analysis. Is that
And starting the
Yeah.
process.
My question is, do we make a motion on it tonight or?
no, this is,
No.
yeah, just as long as you give notice, it's been introduced, we put it, you've got a period of time that it has to lie in state. Well, or it has to be available at the recorder's desk.
It's
Yeah.
been available for several weeks already.
So I guess you just open the public hearing, allow comment, and then close the public hearing.
We don't really then.
You don't have to take any action on this at all.
No, public hearing,
Just that it's been presented and
Well.
Moving down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. take comments, and if you don't have any comments, approve it. Can't remember how many days. Do you remember?
So, yeah, so the process, and I don't remember the exact date, I think it's 30 days, but we're not adopting the impact fee facility plan today, but we're just getting the public hearing. We'll start the impact fee analysis if staff recommends that we're directed to do that. And then we'll kind of work on those concurrently. They'll come back with a public hearing for the impact fee analysis report. That also, I think, gets a public hearing, doesn't it, Gary?
Actually, so the IFFP has a hearing.
That's this one.
The analysis really doesn't have a hearing. It has a
Oh.
public meeting. And then the enactment has a public hearing.
Oh, the enactment. Okay.
That's the last step. in the
So we'll
process.
review publicly the impact fee analysis when you will do that when that comes. And then when you're ready to adopt it, you'll have to hold a public hearing and allow some, I guess, last minute input before you say, this is the fee we're going to adopt for development. Now, the impact fee analysis will give you a recommended maximum amount that you can charge. So, and then as a council, you're free to choose any amount up to that. But if you choose something less, you should also have a plan in place on how you'll come up with the difference, right?
We good?
I think so.
I am.
Yeah, that's.
Just like to thank Matt for all of his.
Yeah.
efforts.
And
It's
time
been,
staff.
kind of feels like it's been a long time coming, huh? But we're there, just a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of stuff that needs to go in the plan, but from this point forward, the process should go really smooth because of all the legwork that Matt's done, so I appreciate that.
Hey, Ty, just a quick question. You know, we've talked about just a water study in general. So we'd have an impact fee study, but what about a study for just plain water rates? Would that happen concurrently?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be
Okay.
the same.
It'd be part of the financial advisors.
Yeah, it'd be a combination of rate and impact fee, so they'll
Okay.
analyze both.
They naturally correspond with each other. They'll look at your rates to come up with the impact fee, and if they notice any problems, then they'll recommend new rates.
Yeah, and you know, we've talked for a couple of years about where are we at on rates and do they need to be reviewed? So I'm glad to see that we move forward with that.
Gary, I guess a question for you. How often should impact fee studies be conducted? I mean, seems like you get done with one and then you're ready to do it again.
They say approximately every 6 years. Because they go out to 10 years. So you're supposed to spend them within a 6-year period of time. But we can project it up to 10 years is what they've estimated. And, but quite frankly, when you see sharp increases in prices in the cost of pipe and construction, that type of thing, you better, yes, you better change. You better look at amending your impact fees because you're getting behind. Somebody's having to subsidize it.
So we would have like 4: water, power, wastewater, roads.
We've done roads,
Parks.
Sewer were done right after I got.
Not long ago.
So wastewater and roads is done, so.
yeah, we did sewer, roads, parks.
Parks were done like in 2016.
Oh,
So we're a little behind the 8 ball on water and on power. I like,
we just did the power rate study.
We did.
did that.
Mhm.
Okay. So water, okay.
Time.
That's kind of just, we're always kind of working on one or the other, but this is the next, our water system's kind of the next struggler.
You could do them all at once, for sure.
A little bit of cost involved. but-
Right. Well, and if the other thing, if you remember the roads, the impact fee actually went down. So after the study said we have the capacity. Our roads are, because we have a 60-foot standard. You know, the roads that we have have a lot of capacity for growth. So that impact fee went down actually. So,
I anticipate this one will go up
yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah. So.
I need it.
Are we on Gary?
When they do the general.
Let's see.
They can.
I'm assuming you want me back for the public hearing to answer questions, so.
If we have, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, you're just on the work session. If you'd like
Go get a drink,
to put it in-
round around in your break room and see.
Find something to eat.
General meeting.
Go with Jay. Oh, wait.
Pizza and-
Wait a minute.
And
Don't go with Jay.
crumble cookies or something.
He's just he's just screwed around.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Oh, good. We need to have a little discussion on that, by the way.
You okay, Gary, on the update of,
Sure.
we'll call that training because you'll probably.
I wonder. Ty and I were just talking. Mayor, would it be maybe better since there is pending litigation and we do have a motion pending to include the city in that litigation, it might be better to do that in a closed meeting.
Okay.
And so maybe what we do is just move it on the agenda from the work meeting to the regular meeting, and then just at a time that you think is convenient, we'll just take a motion to go into closed meeting.
We can do
For
that
pending
without
litigation.
putting
think
it
we-
in print.
Yeah, I think we have, yep, there's a Denise's. Right. Yep.
So, yeah, just, And then maybe just at the end, so we don't have to rebroadcast.
Would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay. And that might, I won't put you all to sleep because you'll be there by then. but that'll be-
He was just saying that, he can give us more detail if we, if not, it's just a
Yeah.
generic update, so.
The mayor was there, and I think, don't you think that we should, strategy
it's
would probably,
great.
yep, that'd be good.
So item 4 is training.
Okay. Let's see, great, 10 minutes, 7 minutes.
Well,
So,
yeah, let's try to leave.
2,
Some of us are getting old, so we need to have a couple of minutes.
Have to stagger too, so they don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
okay.
It's a one-holer.
Basement's available.
All right, so just a real quick, so I've been on the phone, on a Zoom meeting all day today. Seems like it was only really 2.5 hours with the developers and with the League of Cities and Towns, looking at this year's land use issues and what types of things are giving rise to those issues. And, it's kind of like that sucking sound that you hear just before the tsunami comes. You see the fish flopping on the beach. I've described it like that before. And then all of a sudden the waves there, right? And that's kind of what we're looking at. We've got some recommendations that are coming out of what they call the CHA committee, which is the Committee for Housing Affordability, that are very radical. They involve, for example, if a city has not met the requirements of putting in their master plan provisions that will provide for affordable housing. And I realize we're a small city that really you don't have to participate in the extensive additions to your master plan. But at the same time, they're looking at imposing on every city a responsibility for putting in those affordable pieces. And the penalty for not doing it would be that they would take away your BNC road funds, or they would, we don't use that for building new roads. Typically, what we use it for is we use it for maintaining our roads. So you're not really penalizing. They always do. Yeah, again, for one thing or another. They're also threatening attorney's fees on that. And then the other thing that they're threatening to do is if they want to speed up the time period for our processing applications, because there's still a philosophy or a theory at the very top of the legislature that more units somehow is equivalent to lower price. And the interesting thing is you've seen the results of that in the last 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, where the interest rates have gone up, fewer people are buying homes, right? And so the cost of homes are going down a little. It's not because we're building more homes. It's because you got an outside factor that is causing the decrease in price. If you were to still have the market that we had a few weeks ago, that price would still be escalating. It would still be going up because the developers are making more money by building new homes, and they're not affordable homes. They're homes that are just as more expensive than yours and mine. We could not afford to move into our homes right now. And so the idea that by building more homes, you're somehow going to get affordability is not correct. So speeding up the process, I get it. They want to require that a subdivision process be completed in 14 days. So all the reviews and everything else be placed so it's ready for placement on the planning commission agenda within 14 days. So you got your engineer, your fire marshal, you got your planners. They all have to do that work within a 14-day period of time. For me, that's ridiculous. That would be ridiculous. And the penalties they've talked about for not doing that would be for every day that you don't do it, they take back a percentage of your fees, your building permit fees. So if you've paid a building permit fee of, $10,000, $5,000, whatever it happens to be, they'll take back their building permit fee. There's also talk about if you go beyond a certain level, actually assessing damages to cities that go beyond a certain level so that you end up paying the developer for a loss of, for example, interest rates may have gone up, or he may have lost customers as a result of it. So these are things that are going on up there that right now we're trying to protect against. But, and I've got just 1 minute left so that we have,
Pretty interesting.
understanding.
Dang, I wish we could.
but
No,
But
it's-
the interesting thing, I have a father-in-law, he's 90 years old, and he came down from Canada this last week, and he got in a plane on Friday afternoon and jumped out of that plane with a parachute, of course. But I thought to myself, at 90 years old, why would you take that kind of risk? And I think often, yes, it'd be a great thing to do. But his wife was on the ground. I think she could have had a heart attack. But I guess the bottom line is this: a lot of cities are purposely violating the statute, state statute, and that's what causes a lot of these things to come about. It's intentional, and sometimes it's just they just kind of flip their nose at you. And I've dealt with them, and when they've done that. And another piece of this that we won't talk about tonight is the development agreements and getting around the law by putting in your development agreements permission by the developer to violate state law and to require them to do something that they're not required to do by state law. So it's those types of things that we got to be careful of. Morgan's great. You got a great planner. You got Teresa, who watches things carefully. You got an attorney that attends the meetings. You got council people and a mayor that are interested in what's going on at the planning level. And so they don't get out of control. This is one of the few cities that I can say I feel really good about. I've never heard a story about Morgan. Never, ever heard a negative story about Morgan City. Now, Morgan County, but not Morgan.
Hey, Gary, you mentioned that we don't, that we don't have to deal with some of that because of our city size, but aren't we knocking on the door? Isn't it a 5,000 member threshold that puts us into the larger size for paying attention to the rules and the reporting?
It's bigger than that for the what they call the MIHP, I think is what it's called, medium income housing
Mhm.
goals that you have to accomplish. There are only 82 cities in the state that actually fit that category. I think it's 50,000 or over, I think is what.
Okay. Oh, we've got a ways to go.
5,000 for impact fees. But
Yeah.
having certain things.
All right.
Anyway, all right. That's a quick
Okay,
overview, and I'd love to go into
Thank
more
you.
detail sometime.
one of these times we gotta just put you as the word.
Get caught up.
That
Well,
would put all you to sleep, I promise.
We'll move on.
Yeah, it's the scariest thing I've ever.
When did affordability become the government's
Right.
a function of local government?
It's like I tell them, I said,
I can understand the permitting, but it's not our responsibility to dictate
no, it's not.
pricing.
That's insane.
It's not. It is
Because that
insane.
scares me.
Yeah, it should. Yeah,
How can you get everything
Yeah.
ironed out?
you can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
Earth can't even resubmit in 14 days, so it's like.
We push back. We said, let's put the same limitation on your information. So, and there's been a lot of pushback.
And the other thing is my, that 14 day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they pull that ripcord. We got 45 days. Yeah, it does. There are ways around it.
Because there's also a lot of cities that are doing subdivision design to red lines. So the engineer will just submit that.
Yeah.
And they'll spend all their time.
Cities don't know. They're in-
But storage, no.
So that's saving money, but they're not paying our money, that city can and the cities that are doing the work for the applicant.
It is. It is. When you do that.
How hard are you turning on Zoom?
That's always.
No, I'm just saying that at least it's more.
Not enough hours. We let ourselves go. We get in the car, man, 100 times a day. Don is. Yes, yes. Yes. About 6 months ago. He was way back. Yeah, he got he got kind of one of those when they get that, he got really bold. You know, kind of mean. What's that? Is that different? Right, yeah. Different kind of mean. Okay. A little worse. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. That was kind of a fun group to work with. There was, who was it? There's you and I and Jim Brown and Dave was our, they moved me down here by the rabble rouser down here on this end.
I hit him. How about that?
Nice to see you, Eric.
Was it a good rap? I'm not on. Welcome to our general meeting. I appreciate seeing Carl here. Thanks for coming, Carl. And let's begin. We'd like to welcome all of us on Zoom, if there's any besides Dave, but welcome, Dave. Appreciate you joining us. And I think we have everybody in attendance. Let's begin with a pledge of allegiance, and I've asked, what did I ask? Jeff? Yep.
Everybody rise, please, and repeat the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Jeffrey, if you could give us a word of prayer.
Okay, you bet. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this beautiful fall afternoon here in Morgan and the opportunities and the blessing it is to live in this community and in this valley. As we're meeting tonight as a Morgan City Council, help us to be able to do those things that will be beneficial for the people in this community today, and as well as set the foundation that will be beneficial for future generations. We are so grateful for the opportunity that's ours to be here. We ask a blessing this time to be upon our government leaders around the world, that they will be able to look for ways to find peace and harmony so that we can continue to live the lifestyles that we need in our lives. We ask a blessing to be upon our military and first responders, that they too will be safe and know of our appreciation for their sacrifice in our behalf. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion on the approval of the meeting's agenda? That would be today's meeting.
So moved. But.
Yes, we need to change the agenda.
Well, I was waiting for a second.
second that.
Now on the discussion piece, do we need to, Gary, note that change?
Yes. Would be a motion to just move that item number 3 in the work meeting to the general meeting, and it will be a closed meeting at the conclusion of the meeting.
So do I need to amend that motion I just made to approve of the meeting agenda?
Yes, with that amendment.
With that amendment. Yeah, okay. So I'll add that amendment. Do it. I don't turn my phone off. Okay, I'm sorry. I will make that motion with that amendment as described by Mr. Craig.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a meeting, and if I'm learning right, I don't need to ask for an A or an A. Correct, Denise? A vote, okay. Raise the hands.
Aye.
Up. Any opposed? It's like Dave's up too. Okay.
Right.
Now let's, we have a motion to accept the city council special meeting minutes of August 9th. And I think if I remember right, we can add B and C and put them all in one motion. And the warrants.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we approve of the city council special meeting minutes of August 9th, 2022. The city council joint work meeting minutes, August 23rd, 2022, and the warrants. The time period from August 19th, 2022 through September 23rd, 2022.
Okay, let me just ask, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes and the warrants?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes and the warrants?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second to approve the minutes and the warrants of the city council special meeting minutes, August 9th, 2022, the city council joint meeting minutes of August 23rd, 2022, and the warrants of 8/19/22 through 9/23/22. No more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, vote was unanimous. Now we have a time set aside for the public to express their ideas or concerns. And so Carl, at this time, we'd like to invite you to the podium and state your name and an address.
Carl Harding, 136 North, 300 West in Morgan. I have a bit of a dilemma on my water. I have two water hookups, one for the house and one for that goes down 300 West to the barn. When Pheasant Run subdivision came in, we had to tear out part of the line and we build a new line on down further to the barn. here's my problem, and I've talked to Ty a little bit about it. In the summer, from May 20th usually to about October 15th, my cows go on the mountain. And so I use probably less than 100 gallons a month for that period of time. When my cows come home, they drink somewhere around 23,000 gallons a month, which increases my bill from usually the 1st of December through the 1st of May to around $100 a month. And I'm told that, well, you've got the hookups. If you don't use them, then, we can't do anything about it. I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done to accommodate that. If I turn it off, I get charged $40 for the turnoff fee. When I turn it back on, I'm charged $40 for the turn on fee. And the bill for the month is $31 through those months. So it just doesn't seem right to me. And I'm assuming there's probably other people in the same boat. That's the one issue that I would like to get some potential help with. Secondly, that new water line we put in, I tried to use old fittings out of the old hydrant in the old barn. And obviously I ended up with a leak. And I had consistent use up through the end of March. And then in April, it jumped up to 41,000 gallons with no surface water. I was going to come to the city and look at things, and then I thought, well, you better find out if you got a leak. So I found a leak in my tank and repaired that leak and thought everything was okay. And then the 1st of June, I used 53,000 gallons with a bill for $242.50. At that time, Blake Rich had called and said, Carl, you're using more water, and I know you don't have any cows down there. So I told him, I said, well, let's just turn it off. He said, well, there won't be a fee to turn it off. He said he'd cleared that with the maintenance manager. So anyway, I paid those bills, and then August 1st, I get a bill for $31 with no usage. I checked in with some people and thought it had been taken care of. Then in September, I get another bill for $31 plus a $31 fee plus a late charge. And there seems to just be I was told that the information on the not being charged for a shut off was not given to the people that do the billing. But I've also been told that periodically there's a waiver for overcharges. I don't know. I don't have that for a fact. I just been told that happens. And so, I hopefully have the leak fixed, and Ty told me that policy is if you get the leak fixed, then we'll give you credit for half of your largest bill. So that's my concern. And, I've been very helpful, I believe, to the city. We allowed them to put a new electric line off 300 West down to Pheasant Run subdivision, put in new posts, everything. They also ran a line for me, which I paid for, but I do believe that they didn't probably charge me the going rate for that. I, had a tree that was in the way, and I went to the neighbors who owned the tree and got authorization to have that removed. And I just would like some help.
Okay, Ty, can you bring us up to date on the normal, now, I'll give you what I know and Ty can correct me. How's that?
Okay.
Or what I think I know.
Well, Ty
Connie.
explained a lot of it to me. I met with Ty. He explained a lot of it to me. It just seems that if we have meters, to me, if we've got meters, then why don't we just meter everybody like we do with electrical power?
And you mean without the $31 fee?
You know, just charge based on usage. That might not be reasonable, but I don't know.
Well, Ty?
So, next step, I think we still, so Stephanie's been on and off with having a baby, and that's where the billing part comes from. We need to just schedule a time to sit down, you and her and I to
Well,
go.
I've paid everything, so, everything's up to date. It's not like
Right.
but I still get shut off notices, so.
Well, but that's probably because something needs to be adjusted, or if there was something else in the thing. So that's one. So there's a couple of discussions. Yes. Yep.
I was under the understanding.
You know if you're gonna make a comment. Sorry, I enjoyed
So
that.
I was under the understanding that since we weren't gonna charge you the $40 shut off, because that's currently what the fee schedule is, and the $40 reconnect, you had mentioned you would rather just pay the $31 a month and not do that.
Well, I paid the $31 because I wasn't given an option. I had either option of pay $40 for the shut off, pay $40 for the return on, or pay the $31 for the time that it's been shut off.
And the way I understood it is if you paid the $40 shut off, you didn't get charged the 31. But then the city would come back and turn it back on. Once it turned back on, then Stephanie reinstated the $31 bill. But
But
I
they
don't
would
know.
also charge a $40 valve turn on.
Valve turn on and turn off, yes.
But I mean, it takes
It's either one, it's either
takes
one
10
or the
minutes to
other.
turn the valve off.
Yeah, so some of it is our fee schedule. So I'll just say, we do need to go sit down though we had one, the water operator and the supervisor both leave. The information didn't get back, I don't believe, to Stephanie. Then the front counter help. Everybody's been trying to help. That's my belief, is anything that we can do, right? But we have to follow our fee schedule. There's no such thing. And then there's two different conversations. One, because the leak was intermixed in the conversation. So we do have a process that the way that we handle leaks where it gets shut off. You get the leak fixed, you turn it on, we credit half the overage. That is, that's a separate process, but I think there's another conversation that you're talking about, that our fee schedule doesn't accommodate seasonal usage, right? Because we don't have anything in there. It's just simply you pay $40 to disconnect, you pay $40 to reconnect. That's $80. If you pay $31 a month with no usage for 4 months, it's cheaper to shut off and turn back on, right? But it's not set up for barn use, it's for home occupants. So the fee schedule is set up that way also, because it's not just the person that turns off the meter, it's you gotta activate and deactivate the account in the billing system. So it's more belabored than just shutting the meter off, right? And we're willing to do whichever. So we'll just have to sit down with them, and the big question is the city interested? I think what you're saying is the city interested in establishing a different rate structure for barn or animal use that would be just simply metered and not a residential connection, which I don't think in our fee schedule we have anything for that type of, right? It's not necessarily ag use. I mean, like what, you're not outdoor watering.
Culinary water.
it's culinary water, right? But we do have,
For agricultural
but stock watering,
stuff.
it's stock watering, which we don't have anything in our, and I think, Carl, that's what I hear you saying is for your situation, it doesn't make any sense to, for that intermittent use for livestock. Mike, is that correct or, yeah?
And you might be aware that others are in the same situation.
I don't know. I know people have more than one hookup and they're watering animals. And, they seldom ever use over the amount, even on my house. I never use over 5,000 gallons on my house.
And so we have.
That's a whole
We have
different
the
thing.
base rate. The base rate pays for access to the system. It doesn't pay for the water and I've talked to Carl about that too. And so anyway, that's kind of where we're at. If there's anything we can do, we do look at the fee schedule and say, hey, if we did this, it would be a little cheaper for you. If it's a leak, we definitely want it shut off so that you're not.
Well, I'm hoping it's repaired, but
Yeah.
who knows?
So anyway, I just appreciate
I appreciate your time.
the feedback. And then if you'd like to schedule a time where we could just do an account review with myself and Stephanie and go back and see if there was anything that we could have done, any adjustments that should or could have been made, we'll definitely do those. Because I don't disagree that there's probably not a lack of, or the communication between the operator that originally shut you off for a leak that no longer works here and the supervisor that's no longer here. And then Stephanie having her baby, I think the front counters helped as much as they can, but I would say that there's a high chance that, there's some communication that hadn't been followed through on. And then for the council, we'll have that discussion if they're interested in a stock watering or a barn use type of a rate structure. So can I ask a question? Is every year, do you just shut the water to the barn off in the summer and turn it back on in the winter?
No, I haven't turned it off in the summer.
You just leave it,
I just leave it.
connected.
I mean, when they put it in the subdivision, it was all turned off and, it's just like when Turner's had their fire, I'm assuming they got charged $40 for a shut off fee. That I don't know that they did or didn't, but it would seem to me that when you have a real emergency, the $40,
Yeah.
you're already in the hole.
Yeah, well, and the same with a leak, right? It's just like, you gotta get the leak, you gotta get it shut off.
But I did appreciate someone contacting me and telling me, your leak's not fixed because you've got this overage.
Yeah, and I think Stephanie was a part of that too, looking at the billing, the operators wouldn't know, the usage.
Stephanie.
Yeah. And same thing, when something sticks out like that, sometimes they will notice that it's out of whack, but I appreciate.
All right.
Appreciate it, Carl.
Your time. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Carl. Denise, do we have anyone else requested to make a comment? Okay. We have a motion. Thanks, Carl. Yes, yes. Okay, do we have a motion to open the public hearing regarding the water conservation plan dated July 2022 and Morgan City's culinary water capital facilities plan and impact fees facilities plan?
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
We could do these concurrently, right?
I don't think so.
We could do these concurrently.
Yes.
Denise? Okay.
Okay,
I don't think we really can-
Well, there's no motion, right?
Not on the second, that's right.
Yeah. Or it's discussing.
So if you want to give just a brief synopsis of what the water conservation plan is, and then make the motion.
Yeah, I turn it over to Mr.
yeah, that's what I would do.
Matt Harpinson with Jones and Associates. The water conservation plan is just a plan that you are required to review and adopt formally as a council about every 5 or 6 years. This update describes how you have your progress on the previous goals that you made and identifies some new goals as well. I think we've all talked about those a little bit and what they are. The purpose of the plan is just to help you as a council encourage water conservation. And you do that by completing these goals and a little bit of public outreach as well, notifying residents of their use and helping encourage them to conserve water. So basically, I think your biggest goal for the next 5 years then was just to reduce water use by 1% a year, so that in 5 years you'll be at least 5% less water use per person per capita, right, than you are today. So the numbers, I will say this, the numbers in the water conservation plan are taken from different reports that are received by the state than the water capital facilities plan. The water conservation plan and the doesn't, for example, contemplate irrigation use, right? So you're just talking about domestic indoor use of your water. So you will probably see some differences between the two reports that we're discussing tonight, but that's the reason, the main reason anyway. So.
Any questions here? We've had a work meeting on it, but is there any comments of anybody on Zoom? Is there only one on Zoom I see is Dave, so.
And I guess to make note, this plan has been available for people to look at and will continue to be available here at the city office, if anybody
For 30 days?
to come.
The conservation plan? Or the conservation plan has already been reviewed actually by the state
Okay,
and they have approved it. They are just to the sentiment that it meets the standard requirements for you to adopt it. And so now tonight you can adopt that knowing that it's already been reviewed and approved by the state.
And I guess maybe for the record, I just, publicly comment that this was fleshed out in the work meeting, discussed some details of both of these plans. So sometimes I get the feeling that if somebody watches these tapes, they think we're just rubber stamping everything without having any discussion about it, but it was discussed prior to the work meeting. So we'll make that point.
so I guess, Mayor, I can make the motion to accept the water conservation plan July 2022.
Do we have a second?
Yes, we gotta approve the.
We'd have to come out of.
Oh, do we have to come out? Can we make that in a public?
No, I think you come out of the public hearing and then do your motion.
But doesn't need a motion.
And Leighton does the discussion and the motion on the item and goes to the next public hearing, does that, and then at the end, when they make the final motion, they close the public hearing with that final motion.
Well, we can go,
But does this
We've
plan,
done it both ways.
but I thought I asked the question at the work meeting if this needed a motion.
The conservation plan.
Does not.
That's what we're doing.
Okay,
So now the question just becomes is
Make the motion.
to come out of public hearing.
I thought we.
They can close a public hearing and then make a motion on it. can't they?
That's that then.
But we can have a motion on this. And a second on item A.
Or let's back off and do
Or
that
back off and do them both.
at the end.
Okay.
We're both in a public hearing right now, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I jumped
Okay.
the gun.
So we'll erase the motion.
Come
and
back
we'll-
around to that.
We'll come back to that motion. Okay, Matt, you're on again. A short
Okay.
description of our
Yes.
Morgan City's culinary water capital facilities plan and impact fees facilities plan.
Yeah, just to echo what the council member London said, we've talked about this in depth in the work meeting. So I'm just trying to give it a brief review just for minute purposes, but the culinary water capital facilities plan and impact fee facility plan identify projects that you need to continue to grow. And it also identifies projects that you need to fix some problems that you may already have in the system. And the impact fee facilities plan portion will also identify the costs associated with those projects and then how much of those costs are attributable to growth. And so the capital facilities plan looks at growth through build out for, the next 40 years or so. The impact fee facility plan just looks at the growth and what we expect in the next 10 years or so. And then we select projects from the capital facilities plan that fit our growth needs for about the next 10 years. And those are the ones that we have cost estimates associated with those already and identified what portion of those projects are deficiencies that just need to be fixed and that are the city's responsible for, and which portion of the costs are directly attributable to growth and which the development could be charged for. And so these plans will be used to perform an impact fee analysis. And that hasn't started yet, but would probably start soon. And then that impact fee analysis would be used to establish a new impact fee rate for the culinary water system. So basically, there's an executive summary. Basically, it describes what your current needs are and what your future needs will be at build out, right? That's way down the road. And so we've identified source capacity, which includes both your annual water use and the water use on a peak day, and your storage capacity, how much water you have stored in your water tanks, and then just kind of an analysis on your distribution system and how well it's performing. And you're doing great, I think, in all three aspects of water source, water storage, and water distribution. But as you look out down the road, 10 and 40 years down the road, there are several projects that we would recommend that you do. And the costs of those are identified in here. And like I said, would be used to establish an impact fee and also help budget for the deficiencies that the city needs to correct themselves without help from development, right? So any questions? Maybe it'd be a better way to start off.
So on that graph or that map we was looking at, the deficiencies just seem to be more towards fire hydrants.
Right. None of the deficiencies were affecting daily water use. The deficiencies were all related to trying to pull a large fire flow through a small line in some of the fringes, if you will, of the city, areas where the water lines don't loop or connect together. And so it's just hard to get fire flow out to some of those far reaching areas. Yeah, for a fire. So, and, you know, the fire marshal can establish whether he's satisfied with that, even though it may not actually meet the fire flow required in Appendix D of the fire code, but he might say, you know what, the structures down there, yeah, they're okay. You know, he's not worried about them. So he would be a good person to talk to and go over some of these deficiencies and see if he feels like there's a need to fix them now or wait, you know, just what they could be. So I do want to, is there a question, another question?
Yeah, Matt, when you talk about build out, does that include annexation? Areas that have been identified as annexable?
That's a great question. We use the annexation that is your current annexation declaration and that is part of your general plan, right? The general plan. So we did look at that. We looked at those areas. Now, that doesn't mean you're only limited, like that you can't annex more or, you know, that you have to annex that, but that's what we used to establish the project requirements and needs. Yeah.
So that is included then in those figures and numbers and costs.
It is.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And just really quickly, we identified that even though we have enough water, that our sources will produce enough water for your annual needs, there are times in the summer where our peak day water use is higher than we feel comfortable with. And so we want to start developing a couple of new sources of well so that we can meet those peak day demands. And associated with that, and this is something we didn't talk about, are water rights. So that's another thing. If anywhere that you annex, I think you should bring in some water rights. There are some special areas of development, the SID or whatever that has its own rules, but when you annex property, you're probably going to end up being short on water rights. You can actually pull enough water out of the ground with your sources, but you don't have the right to pull that much water out of the ground. And so that's another thing that I think we need to look at long-term is how to acquire some additional water rights. I believe I did not include the North Morgan Water Users Association water rights. And I believe you're in the process of acquiring them if you haven't already. And so that will help because you'll obtain some additional water rights with that property purchase and that will go toward your future growth.
So is there a formula then, Matt, that you would use for as far as to tell a developer how much water right that the city would need to bring with them?
Yes, more or less. It depends on the type of development that's coming in and what their needs are. So we would just evaluate it based on their land use, if that makes sense. What is it, single residential family units or is it a high density type development? We would look at that. And then when you annex it, you will assign a land use to it. And that land use will help us establish the amount of water that we should expect that they would have to bring in, as well as density. So if you have, a very difficult piece of property that to build on that you're annexing, we would also take that into account. For example, if it's a steep hillside, you're not going to get as much density up there. And so
are we currently doing that?
No, when
secondary water come about, my recollection is the city quit, what's the term, taking or requiring water from a developer. Is that correct? But we're not doing it now, right?
I don't know.
Their water goes
To the secondary.
water. That's going into the secondary water system.
Yeah, exactly. So are you saying that the city ought to probably also require
For culinary
purposes? And we're not doing that right now, I don't currently, right? But you're saying that's something we really probably ought to take a look at doing. We used to do it. I know we used to do it, but
I would just say any property that you're bringing in, you don't,
Annexing.
you haven't reserved water rights for them. So they need to bring water rights with them.
Well, so he's saying annexation, so if we expand our footprint, any of that new, we should acquire water right to service that in culinary.
Some culinary water rights also probably end up being secondary water rights also.
Mhm.
In
But
an
we-
annex situation.
But we wouldn't require a developer to bring to the city culinary water rights for a piece of property already within the city boundaries.
We're talking outside the city boundaries.
We are.
Yeah, we should have adequate water right
For
for
everything in the
For our
system.
current
System.
for our
Okay, I
current
just,
footprint.
I just haven't been clear on that the last few years, so.
Yeah, it's something to look at. So he's, and depending on how we grow, we just need to keep track of that. So as our, as things develop, we need to just pay attention to, the water right and the sources that we have intact. Right now, we're on track, but depending on how we develop and where we develop, at some point, if we're getting into a situation where we're gonna be short, we need to
Take a look at
change
that.
that. Uh-huh.
Just
Identifies your expected water right need, the amount of water that you'll need, and it also identifies what you have. And you're fine, like Ty says, you're fine today. But as you grow, I would start to gather those water rights as they annex in. I think it's a good idea to even, if there are water rights just floating out there that people aren't using, they come to the city sometimes and they will say, I have this water right, I have no one that can use it. Do you want this? And the city can purchase those or obtain those, however, and hold those in reserve. The nice thing about when a city holds a water right, it's protected. It's wonderful, right? But because they have this, the law protects the water right when it's owned by a municipality and it's to be used for municipal purposes.
We
right?
can lease it.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, in fact, there might be a water bank. I don't think there is one now, but they've talked about establishing a water bank and people can take it to that as well, but they may just want to dispose of it.
No, the city can't, the city cannot divest itself, right? If they own a water share,
Right, we can never sell a water
but we
right.
could lease it.
We wouldn't need to lease it.
Well, actually,
I don't know.
later
It might
on,
be
I
a
wanna
question
talk
for the
about that.
attorney. Yeah, you actually have a water right attorney too, by the way.
Sure.
And yeah, and he would be able to answer those types of questions.
Are you talking culinary or secondary?
Well, right down,
Unleashed.
something come out of the Water Advisory Board meeting the other night that I wanted to discuss, so secondary.
Yeah, secondary, but not, yeah, because that's not in public use. That's a third party system. But as a city, we wouldn't need to lease. If we have the water right in our system, they just become customers. So there's no need to ever lease a water right. Does that make sense?
I'll talk to you offline.
Yeah. But on secondary, it would not necessarily have to be a water right. In secondary, it's just dedicating a water share. Right?
Well, I got a note here. I'll bring it up.
And
I've got one
that
for you too then. We'll talk.
brings up or Councilman Tony brings up a good point.
Everything's fine.
That if you're gonna expand your secondary water system, bring in secondary water rights as well, right? So, because you've got that secondary system on the east side of 84 and Interstate 84. And so you just remember that you have water and you could use it, but you don't have the right to use it, right? And so you've got to make sure your water rights match up with your usage and remember this. There are always system deficiencies, right? And so it's nice to have more water than you actually need because it will come into your system and it just doesn't, you don't get, 100% in, 100% out. You only get like 80%, 90% out of your system. So you want extra, right? You want to have some extra water rights. So anyway.
What was that? On the agriculture waters or whatever it may be, can you take them shares and trade them Weaver Basin for culinary
So there's something called an exchange application, and I don't really want to get into it because I don't understand it, but your water right attorney will. What that means is that you can exchange water in one location for somewhere else. And so you just file a chain, what they call it, a water right exchange. And then they divert water one place to replace water that's being used somewhere else, if that makes sense. I'm not really sure how they work, to be honest, but that can happen.
It's all quite a situation after all. The other night, the Water Advisory Board, McDonald's comes to the Water Advisory Board. Secondary Water says, we require a half a share of water for you, McDonald's. To put it, McDonald's says, we don't have a half a share of water. Well, you go find a half a share of water because we got a half a share of water. That's our requirement. So I guess where I'm coming from is, so the city has all of these shares of water and that they allow secondary water to charge their system with. Can't the city just lease a half a share of water?
I don't know the legal process for doing that or how it's done.
That's why I asked the
Yeah.
question, can't they lease water?
Yeah, that's another question for Jeffrey Gittens, I would think.
So for
That's
that situation, we could look at our own where they're dedicated. And if we have shares that are not being used in a different place, we could dedicate it to that property. All they have to know is which shares we have and which property it's being dedicated to, but all the shares are actually in our name. Right?
So Ty, wouldn't you have to be careful though? I mean, you can't require one to provide a half a share and not another one.
Right.
Like I said, it's probably a discussion for a later time.
Yeah, again, I don't know that these are discussions for the public
Yeah, I only
hearing.
brought it up because I just want you to be aware that I feel if you continue to use water at the rate you have in the past and growth continues as we projected it, that you will get to the end of the road and be out of the right to use enough water.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the important part.
Water. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. And you wanted to just continue to develop a few wells, keep the springs active and working it as efficiently as they can. That's the cheapest water that you can get. You don't have to pump it. So.
Any more discussion? I think we've kicked it around pretty good. It's amazing you can talk before and find things after, so. I'd like to ask for a motion in the second to close the public hearing and also on the water conservation plan and the city culinary's water.
Mayor, I'd move that we close the public hearing for the water conservation plan and July 2022 and Oregon City's culinary water capital facility plan and impact fee facility plan.
Okay, Dave, we have a motion from Dave. Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on the water conservation plan of July 2022. Guess I should also say resolution 22-40. Also the Morgan City Culinary Water Capital Facilities Plan and Impact Fee Facilities Plan. Is there any more discussion on that motion?
We just did.
Yeah.
Now we have to vote on that.
Let's vote on that one.
On the,
Public hearing.
but we need a motion to
Just motion to close. the
close the
hearing.
public hearing, which we've had.
Then we did that. But we didn't have,
A vote?
We need a vote.
there was a motion that was started, but there was no vote. So then you continued with the discussion. Am I remembering this right? Now we closed the public hearing, so now we need to make the motion on
Gotcha, because we closed the public hearing and then just make a motion.
Right, on the resolution. So we've come out of the public hearing, okay? So
Okay, Dave, do you want to change that motion, Dave?
You know, I couldn't hear
Out of the
Denise.
Public hearing.
Sorry. We don't have to change, because that would require an amended motion. It'd just be easier if somebody just made a motion now to adopt
Okay.
resolution 22-40.
Has anybody got a motion? Sorry.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we approve resolution 22-40, the water conservation plan.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the water conservation plan of July 2022, resolution 22-40. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Okay.
And then let's, thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
I think you can head down the freeway. Thanks again.
Thanks for everything, Matt.
Okay, item C.
So, Steve, did we vote on the closing the public hearing?
Yes,
I think we did.
yes.
Yes, we get a yes.
Okay.
Okay, item C, water conveyance and development agreement. Como Springs discussion, recommend or not recommend changes to page 5 of the agreement by Grant or C. Grant McKay dated 9/8/22. Has everybody looked at that?
I have.
We going to go with the
Not on this one.
No,
this one?
This is just if Mayor, is it okay?
what's that?
Is it okay if I?
Oh,
take this?
heavens, yes. You're always okay, Ty.
So this is just a proposal from the Como Springs Development to amend the agreement that we already have in place. We've talked about it internally and our attorneys have recommended that there's no reason at this point to amend. If we get to a stage where they need more water, the contract already has provisions for how that happens and at what point they would need to convey. And so instead of just denying the request, we wanted to make sure we just brought it to council so that you were aware that the request had been made. I don't know that this requires anything other than just making you aware that our plan is to. Okay, so it is up for discussion. I couldn't remember where we left it, but basically, since that agreement came from council, it needed to come back to council. And there's just that one line. But staff and the attorney's recommendation is there's no need to amend the standing agreement. So that's where
Do
that,
you need a motion for that, Ty?
yeah.
Okay, I so move that we leave the original agreement intact without a change or an amendment on line number 16 of the contract.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So are we calling, is this actually a contract? Or, I guess
Yes.
a contract's an agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion to not change line 15 or item 15. We also have a second. Is there any more discussion on that?
It looks to me, Mayor, that he's made that change in line 16. I don't know that it's a big deal, but Probably doesn't matter which paragraph it is if we're not changing it.
Well, it looks like he's drawn an arrow, doesn't it? 16.
Yeah, down to 16.
So that would be item 16.
Yes.
15, sorry.
Yeah, paragraph 16.
Yes. So let me rephrase that we have a motion to not recommend a change on item 16. And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. And I think we want to go through our city reports and business before we do the closed meeting. Shall we get Gary back?
Sure.
Okay, Ty.
So just for your awareness that the stop sign at 525 West Scotts Drive has been changed. So we did a study some time ago. Just there was a question from a resident about that stop sign, and so 525 used to have a stop sign on it, and now it doesn't. The road that goes the other way now has a stop sign. So we had did a study. We put out the electronic signs that said change in traffic pattern for a week prior, and then the change was made on yesterday. The idea there is that it's pretty equal on the traffic on the intersection, but 525, it will eventually go all the way back to 400 West. And that'll become the main or more traffic on that road. And so it won't require a stop. And the other one has as much traffic as it will have because it's a dead end. It's a, dead end going one direction. So just wanted to make you aware in case you hear anybody complain that they have to stop now when they used to not have to stop or whatnot. So just a personnel update. I think you may have received the emails that our water departments. Well, we lost our water department. So we had 2 people in our water department. They've both resigned. We've restructured that, and now we have a combined water and sewer department like we had previously. So now we have one management structure, and we have jobs posted for operators. So Kel Watkins is now the water and sewer operator. He's certified in both. He's notified the state, so we're operating under his license to operate both. And so management's intact, and the other departments are helping out. They've all helped out on water leaks and that sort of thing. So we're in the process of getting him some additional help. Denise, did we get Rose? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just. I'll just do an update. Maybe we'll recognize him at the next meeting. We'll invite him to come. But anyway, yeah, it was kind of too close to there. Anyway, I was just gonna, we'll recognize him at the next meeting, but Ro has certified in all 4 of the inspectors. So he's a residential inspector on electrical, water, sewer, whatever the other one was, building. Anyway, he's a residential inspector. So that's nice to have that training done. And so he's not the building official. We still have WC3. Josh is the building official, and WC3 does our commercial, but Ro can now do inspections for our residential. So the more of that he does, the less we do on contract. So that's a little bit of a weight off. That's a hard position. If you remember, we tried to recruit for that one. I offered 4 different people positions and couldn't get them to come here. They all got offers where they currently were. They're just in really high demand. So we put a Ro through school, and he accomplished that. Not necessarily in the city, but Rachel Turk, the County Historic Society lady, is resigning as well. She's taken a job with the Jordan River Commission and just wanted to recognize all the help that she's given us on renovating the train depot and getting us that historic designation downtown. And her group has also went through our historic code, and she'll be sending me their recommendations just so they can be incorporated into our new planning effort. Just she's been really helpful to the city, so she'll be missed. I'm not sure what they're gonna do there, but just really appreciate her and all the help she's been to the city. It's been a great relationship.
That's a county position.
Yeah, it's a county position, but impacts the city a lot. You know, a lot of it's because it's our commercial district as well. I mean, there's other things in the county, but specifically to the city, she's been a big help to us. And she helped us get that grant to renovate the train depot. On the Young Street Bridge project, we did the right of entry and occupancy agreement. It's basically an easement that we had to purchase from the Jenkins to finish out the construction of the bridge. It's going out to bid. And UDOT has almost approved the project to move forward. So UDOT typically requires the match to be provided before they'll start a project, and I've been negotiating with them to let the project go forward, knowing that we have a couple of funding options and that we're willing to bond for our portion. And they consider it an unfunded or underfunded project, but anyway, it goes to the Transportation Commission, and I've written a letter letting them know that we do have a financial plan and that we're good for our match, but we really can't bond for anything until we have an actual bid in place. There's just too many variables on an engineer's estimate. You know, what funds we're committing. I just want a number to base that off of if we do end up needing to bond. Yes.
How do you determine the value of the easement for the Jenkins?
So UDOT has its own process. So UDOT had 4 different people. We had to select an appraiser, a realtor, somebody to negotiate. So UDOT handled that entire process. It took them quite a long time. And then they contact her, and they have like 4 different people involved in that to make sure that they follow the correct process using the federal funds.
Mhm. Was there any negotiation, or was that the amount they arrived at and Jenkins were okay with it?
Yep, that's the amount they arrived at, and they were okay with it. It was more of a timing issue on
Okay.
her part. We're gonna be left with the easement, but she's gonna have like half of her driveway replaced because the slope changes. And that's just part of the construction part, not a not the fence and the sliver of land that was part of that transaction. But
And the cost is just part of the cost of the bridge.
Yep. So it's all included in the in the cost. So anyway, still moving forward. Going out to bid.
The bid date was 27th October.
What's that?
Bid date 27th
Yeah.
October.
Yep. We're moving. So then another update on the UAMPS. I sold some vintage renewable energy credits. Wasn't a large dollar amount, but because it is city property, I brought it to the council just as an update. So the RECs are renewable energy credits. And the vintage means that these are credits that we had on our books from prior years that really there's nothing you can do with them. So anyway, they had somebody that could could pay for them and use them for some tax advantage somewhere. I don't know where, but
Does, does UAMPS market them to this entity for the same price they paid us? Or do they get more out of it?
no, the UAMPS just, it's 100% ours. It's not UAMPS. They just brokered it. So they offered it to the members, anybody that was willing, you know, to sell. This was the offer. And I accepted the offer.
Okay.
Just really, we didn't have anything else we could have done. They helped craft a plan to put them to use for somebody. So that's what we did. And it
Okay.
just showed up on our bill. So given what the price of power was in August, we're not going to recognize the
99.
I mean, it was another one of those extreme months like what happened to us last year. So that's a concern. We're still looking at that, but it was, the market price for power went up to 1,000. We're normally at 78, like our high is like $78 and it went up to like 1,000 megawatt hour, just, tons of volatility and power, and we'll see how that plays out. But if you remember, we just adjusted our power rates to at the end of the year, be able to adjust based on the cost of power. So if it comes back down in a manner that it levels out, we'll be okay. But we weren't exposed to the 1,000, like it was still because of the projects that we're into, but just recognizing what happened to people that are exposed to the market in a heavy way. It's nuts, but anyway, we'll work through it. Project updates. I don't remember if I let the council know that our numbers on the sewer came back well within all of our tolerance levels since we did the diffusers. I think I remember telling you that the diffusers were done, but I think at the time we were still waiting for the test results.
We were,
Yeah, so
that was through the summer months, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so our very first month online, when he's just started running the diffusers, and they put a lot more air than I imagined.
It's bubbly.
It's bubbling, huh?
Yeah. Like in my mind, I don't know why I was imagining more like fish tank type bubbles, but it's
They stirred that stuff.
yeah, they're stirring, it's doing a good job. And then out at the sewers, Kel also has one of those, it's an extractor machine for the duckweed. So you put out a boom and basically capture the surface duckweed, and it just has a little conveyor that brings it out, pulls the duckweed and returns the water back into the lagoon, and you can just run that. It runs itself just right on the bank of pull the duckweed off. So got a late start on it this year, but next year that'll also help big time. It's pretty cool. But other projects are all wrapping up. We're just doing final billing. We just few items at the depot. There's some doorknobs, a door that still needs to be replaced, the hand railings 2 weeks out, and just little punch list items. But I was there this morning. It looks really good. It's all been repainted. The floors are refinished. The bathrooms are tiled on the inside. So if you ever want to, did you?
It's nice.
Super nice, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty pleased with that. The sidewalk project's done. Just waiting for final payment. On this basement project, we still just have this entryway and it's just waiting on the glass, but the new pad has been poured.
Very good.
So that could have been a lot worse with the settling that was there, but it was really just rip out what was there and pour a new pad. So and then just replace all the glass. So I'm pretty happy with that. Anyway, we just have, hopefully I'm sure I'm forgetting some of the other projects, but that one that we approved with the detention pond, to reshape that detention pond is underway. I just did a change order the other day to do a French drain on the low side of that. So basically just, it's like a $600 change, I think, maybe 800 to dig down and then fill it with rock, just so that it's not swampy in the bottom of that on an ongoing basis. So that'll be nice to not talk about that ever again, I hope.
Which pond was that again?
It's a detention pond in the back of a residence that didn't get,
Oh, okay, I know which one. Okay.
didn't get
Okay.
completed and,
It's the yard now. I guess.
yep. Okay. Well, or you get someone like me that's like, I'd rather get it off the books and that would not be a discussion item. Yep. No, it's been ongoing. So I'm not sure if there's any other projects that you have questions about. I think that's kind of the project list, but so I canceled the strategy meeting. While everybody's here, I'd like to see if we could schedule a new time that everybody could attend. Everybody could come early.
Sorry, Dave.
Hey, there's Denise.
Talking about the strategy project planning meeting, doing it at 5 o'clock on October 11th
That works for me.
session.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
We could start it. We'll see how it goes. Just depends on the
We could probably do,
participation.
I mean, Jeffrey, can you do 4:30?
I can get 4:30.
That'd give you an hour and a half.
I'm good.
So, I hope it goes well. I've never done it, but it's a technique I learned at a conference just as a way to get everybody's thoughts down on cards, throw them up on a wall and then naturally prioritize them as we go. So, just see where everybody's thoughts are at, make sure, I'm headed in the same direction that you're headed, or if there's some gaps there, it'll become apparent through that process. So that's why I want everybody's participation, if you don't mind.
So Ty, 4:30 is dinner time.
Well,
It's a corn dog, Dave.
yeah, I don't mind if we can provide food, because that will be a long day, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, now you're talking.
So, okay, yeah, we'll,
Corn dog.
Okay,
um,
we'll bring in dinner.
then last item, and it's not necessarily for this group, but back to the question of water shares. We have an opportunity to buy 5 water shares. I'd like to do that as an RDA project. Have the RDA buy them and hold them for future development. So basically it'd be an RDA only, to facilitate commercial development. That's really the only area in town where the owners of those properties never had water tied to them, right? Like where the hotel was never irrigated. Behind Commercial Street was never irrigated. And that's a defined boundary. I think it's a defined entity, and I haven't talked to Gary about that as a strategy, but the school district just renewed the RDA, redoing that fee structure to give us a project. And so that's just, if everybody's kind of along, if I get some head nods that I'm on the right track, then we can hold an RDA meeting and I could bring an actual proposal to that. So it's 5 shares, and then, we could put whatever parameters on that. But the RDA would own them and then allow applicants to apply for them in order to facilitate their commercial project, and then we would dedicate it to secondary at that point.
That would take care of the issue that I brought up earlier.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't get to it during that meeting, but that's kind of the solution
Yeah.
that I see that would work for that scenario where it's, and to Dave's point, it's not open-ended, it's not why for some and some not for others. It's just an opportunity to facilitate commercial development through the RDA as the agent.
Would they reimburse us then, Ty?
What's that?
Would they reimburse us?
We could talk about that. We could come up with whatever parameters in the RDA, right? So we
Yeah,
can be under these conditions, or if it's a successful applicant, you know, that we approve the project. Right now, we have an incentive program, and we could, you know, either incorporate water as part of that incentive, right? So instead of, like, your benefit is in water, not, you know, there's ways we can structure that, but we could talk about that in the RDA. I just want to, in a general sense, know if I'm on the right track there.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, the principle is that on any kind of a development, in my mind, that the developer, as part of the cost of development, brings water to us. In other words, we've got to get the water from somewhere, and that's part of the cost of that development. So, you know, in that light, it'd be fine if we had a savings account to hold it, but ultimately, if the developer couldn't get water elsewhere, or this was,
We charge them for it.
yeah, facilitated, then, oh, by the way, we can sell you this, and away we go. The other question too, though, is, I mean, do we have more interest in a water right or a water share?
What's that?
Do we have more interest in water rights or water shares? You said these were 5 shares.
Shares, and it's for secondary use. So that's really all we're talking about is just shares in one of the ditch companies. They're very hard to get. The timing of it's probably more so when we have a development ready to develop and nobody's willing to sell. If we can get some of those on our books, we could do whatever we wanted to. But water rights are different than shares. So like the agreement that we have with Como Springs is actual water rights.
Mm-hmm. But that'd be culinary. So you're saying a share would lend itself to irrigation?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's it, in that meeting the other night, in Water Advisory Board meeting, that half a share of water, the Secondary Water Association, believe it or not, in McDonald's viewpoint, could have been a deal breaker. Because they were thinking that they might have to pay $50,000-$60,000 for that half a share of water. And it literally, they wanted to know in that meeting, can we move ahead? Can you essentially guarantee us that you can find us a half a share of water? And to the Secondary Water Association's credit, they were who was in that meeting with me?
Patient tolerant.
They were very, very generous and saying, don't, no, go ahead, get started. We'll find you that half a share of water somewhere. I like what Ty's saying, because it would be nice to have that in the bank, because like he said, a lot of those RDA properties do not have water associated with that piece of property. So I'd hate to see a business go away simply because we can't give him a half a share of water to meet secondary water demands. So yeah, they were pretty adamant that they wanted to know if that was going to hold them up or not. And it's almost like a deal breaker.
Yeah, so I think I got enough head nods to know that we'll convene an RDA meeting and make that a proposal just to discuss, and then whatever terms or,
Where are these 5 shares coming from that we have an opportunity to buy? Could we just,
We better hold
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, don't talk.
okay.
yeah. So I don't want to jeopardize the transaction or, anything like that, so.
So does the second, well, this is another legal question. Does secondary water have a right to all of the city's ditch water?
No.
So we have shares of ditch water, i.e. secondary water out there that's available in situations like, we just don't know how much.
They've got to count on it.
We once did a calculation back when the hotel was. Because we had the same issue arise. And so when the hotel came in, we did get a calculation and discovered we had enough to be able to provide the hotel with shares of water. With enough shares for it to come in, remember?
Mhm. Yeah, but this puts it in a process, so it's not on a individual basis. It just says, here's how the system works. We've already, running it through the RDA. That's kind of my thought, is just if we can acquire them, so.
So once it's ours, it's always
Ours, yeah.
We could lease it.
Well, you can't lease either.
Mm-mm.
You can't allow secondary to use it in its system.
What we do is with a water audit, we tell secondary, it's applied to this land.
Applied to this project.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, apply it here, apply it there, but they're all in our name. So,
The city is actually providing water. For
Okay.
those parcels of property.
yep. So anyway, it just
So
just
in
creates a little
future,
water
if the-
bank.
If the 5 shares get used up, then they're just used up.
mhm.
You can't have somebody come and say,
There's some.
That piece of ground.
he
They
didn't.
would be assigned to that piece of ground.
Yep.
That's how that works.
So it's basically a first come, first serve on a need basis.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and we talk about all those parameters too, right? You gotta check here, you gotta check here, you gotta do whatever you can, and then as a last resort, here's what we have for you, and whatever those parameters are, or I'm just saying that would just facilitate. It's a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, Ty.
Gotta go.
And that's all I have for updates.
Okay, I just need helps with Robert's rule, how to leave this meeting and enter a closed meeting.
So somebody in the open meeting must make a motion to go into closed meeting. And then in the closed meeting, somebody must make a motion to go back into the open meeting. And then you can close the adjourn. So,
You have to state the reason for the closed session.
yeah.
Motion.
Pending.
We
Pending
go
litigation.
into a closed session pending
Litigate.
possible litigation,
Imminent.
pending eminent, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Litigation.
Pending or reasonably
litigation.
imminent litigation.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into a closed meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
I
How do we do that with Dave?